Welcome to all of our ISM members, our chapter partners, and our guests to the Voice of ERP that is sponsored by ISM New Jersey and ElevatIQ. I'm Kathy Perner, the Executive Director for ISM New Jersey. I'm pleased to now introduce and turn the program over to our host, Sam Gupta, who is the Principal Consultant of ElevatIQ and the host of WBSRocks. Take it away, Sam.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for always being kind and letting us share our voice through your community. Welcome, everybody. If you don't know me, Sam Gupta, Principal Consultant at ElevatIQ. ElevatIQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients with the business transformation as well as ERP selection, just to name a few of the things that we do. On that note, we meet for this show every second Thursday, every month, and we bring one of the prominent voices from the ERP community. We have had many different prominent vendors, including your QAD, Apicor, and today we have a very special guest coming from a very special solution called NetSuite. So we have Paul, and Paul, before I turn it over to you, I know that, last time I checked the last name, Farrell, it was in Hollywood, so maybe you can share the correlation. There, typically you have a lot of celebrities with this last name. So maybe talk a little bit about you, who you are, and maybe a little bit about NetSuite as well.
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Yes, my name is Paul Farrell. I don't think there are too many celebrities. There are a couple, so we need a few more famous Farrells out there. But yes, Paul Farrell. I head up product management for industries for Oracle NetSuite. I've been in the business solutions and ERP industry for over 30 years. I used to say over 25 years, and then I realized a couple of years back, no, it's now over 30 years. And sort of done everything in the life cycle of what is commonly known as ERP, from sort of support, custom programming, professional services, pre-sales, marketing, product marketing, and for a long time running large development teams, all focused on driving business benefit across a whole range of industries. So if I look at Oracle NetSuite today, Oracle NetSuite is really one of those solutions that really fulfills the requirement of any type of business. Our primary industries are software, services, not-for-profit, and our product-based industries, manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. We provide a complete suite of solutions that covers every single business aspect, and we're sort of uniquely placed in we're one of these really few solutions out there that provides a coverage for emerging businesses all the way up to global enterprises, and being able to support customers no matter how they evolve and grow, from small to large, diversing, acquiring, changing business models, which we see all the time, manufacturers getting to recurring revenue, services companies starting to get into supply chain issues, all of those types of things. So Oracle NetSuite is a unique solution in being able to provide coverage for all those types of companies. So I've got a broad range of experience. I love software, I love technology, and it's been a great privilege to work in this growing industry. And every few years, there's a new evolution that comes through that needs to be taken into account of. But at the end of the day, it's all about us selling and delivering products at and making a profit and being able to maximize that. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, could not agree more. And thank you so much for being here once again. And I completely agree with your comment related to evolution. And a lot of people, when they think about ERP, they are always going to think that, what ERP is this tight solution, maybe not much innovation is happening. But again, you have no idea how much R&D as well as the investment that goes in creating solutions like NetSuite. So obviously that's very interesting. Now we have some folks in the audience, so I'm actually going to welcome them. So we have Sharon from Texas. Welcome, Sharon. Faith from Virginia, James from New Jersey, Elf, I think, Elf is always joining from Florida. Welcome, welcome. And then we have Rodrigo from Florida as well. And then Kimberly from North Carolina. Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to post one question as well as Mike from Atlanta. So welcome, guys. And I'm going to post one question to the audience, and I'm looking for the answer. When you think of NetSuite, what comes to mind if you have any sort of experience using it? Positive, negative, doesn't matter. Please post in the comment, and then we'll be touching those as we go along. Paul, the next question I'm going to have for you is, as you know, our audience is the procurement people, right? That's who we are talking here, and they are typically assigned a task of either evaluating, selecting ERP, understanding how to sort of fit that in the enterprise architecture and really hit the procurement KPIs. I think that's what they are going to be most interested in. So in your experience, when anybody, if they are undertaking any sort of ERP initiatives for the first time, what are some of the things that you would take care of or you would do to make sure that you are going to be successful with your ERP selection implementation? Oh.
Sure. Well, that's a very broad question, and there are, in a lot of questions, there are a million right answers, and there are a million wrong answers, which makes it complex and interesting. But one of the things that I would say, and this is in general, not just in software selection, but actually in development in other areas as well, when people are going to look for something new, they tend to concentrate on the things they can't do today. And that gets a very large volume of what they're looking for. So I need something that's going to automate X, or I need something that's going to drive my digital commerce channels, which I'm unavailable to do today. And they forget about the things that they do right now. And sometimes, because they just assume, well, anything new must do with the old stuff that we do right now. But in actual fact, a lot of the time, that's not the case. So you need to make sure looking at a solution that is going to run the business today and tomorrow. I think the other thing is, and I'm going to be quite prejudiced here on this because I really believe in what NetSuite does. But if you look at NetSuite, we have 34,000 customers. Every single one of those customers is on the same version, patch, and service pack of the product. Every single one of them. And we've been going for over 20 years. So customers that bought the product 20 years ago and invested in their NetSuite product, they're still getting a return on that investment today because they're on the latest version of the product, all the latest features and functions. So they have been protected through that entire evolution. We've seen lots of horror stories. Someone buys a product, they're stuck on a release, or customize it, it costs them as much to upgrade. So they're never getting a return on that product, or that product's been acquired by another company and put into maintenance mode. So I think looking for a solution, and there are a number of them out there now, where the product you're buying today is going to be the vibrant product of tomorrow. And every single penny that the vendor puts in to the solution, you're being able to leverage the benefit of that. So again, I would look for a vendor who's going to give you that type of return, not a flash in the pan or something that you're going to get stuck on. And as I say, the industry is getting better at that today. It's always been in the DNA of NetSuite. I think the other thing is really look at how you're evolving as a business. You know, it's funny, I was speaking to a customer, actually they were a prospect the other day, and their biggest issue is revenue recognition, because they've brought in all these brand new business models, recurring revenue and how they sell and going into new markets, where they get absolutely bogged down in revenue recognition, which is a boring subject for anyone in supply chain, because we're going to work out how to get the products and how to market and sell the products. But that was their biggest issue. And the reason I bring that up, if you look at how businesses are evolving today, manufacturers especially, and product companies especially, that were traditionally transactional based. I buy a product or I make a product, I ship it, I recognize the revenue. Now you're getting companies into recurring revenue models, which you would traditionally assign to a software type of a business, or of all different types. And so you're starting to build this sort of complexity, and you're getting manufacturers that are starting to deal with the consumer. They're bypassing distributors, and that's a whole different skill set and a whole different functionality. So again, when you're looking at a platform to buy, there's the immediate things that you need to solve, but you also need to look at where is the market going and making sure you have a platform that's going to be able to support you no matter how the market changes. And I think that's vital. And I think sometimes when we're making procurement decisions, they can be uber tactical or concentrating only on the things that we're not doing today, forgetting about the things that are being done. And I think all of those things need to be taken into account. So that is some of the advice I give. The final thing, which is a bit more contentious, is I would also say is that be careful about whims in technology. And this is a very tough thing to do, because there have been technology revolutions or technology introductions over my time in ERP that have completely invalidated solutions that are out there. So if you look at when I first started, it was basically minis or mainframes with dumb terminals, very light connectivity. And then it went from that to richer client experiences, and all modern products within client server. That's what you'd go and buy. But if you think clients, there are still products that are hamstrung by that technology because people want browser-based. So what was a technology that you'd have gone out of your way to buy? It ends up being a technology that's hindering you as a business. So sometimes being on the bleeding edge gives you disruption and the ability to do things better than others, but at the same time, it can also, you can end up on a technology that ends up being dead and actually hindering you as a business. So it is a very complex, entity. But there are companies that out there, like I mean, I'll say Oracle, NetSuite, that have constantly evolved to bring the latest technologies so that customers are always vibrant. So again, that's something that you should look at. So I think the key things, probably in the order I gave, are how I would look at acquiring ERP.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I think I'm going to touch on a lot of different topics that you have mentioned, and going to peel some layers there, and then we can probably build more on that. But before we do that, I'm going to talk to my audience. And I know the last question that I had posed was slightly difficult, so I'm actually going to post a new question, that is going to be easy. So the only thing I'm looking from you is, if you have a favorite technology, it could be anything, a tool that you might be using as of today, okay? Just post that in the comment box. Any favorite technology that you are using as of today. So now, Paul, a couple of comments that you have mentioned. Number one, the today plus the to be model that you mentioned, absolutely spot on, that businesses have to figure that out. Otherwise, you are not really going to get the business benefits. The other thing that you mentioned, and I think that is also sort of a sweet spot for NetSuite, and which is what I want to touch on, because, commerce, when you look at e-commerce, DTC, business model transformation, talk about recurring revenue, these are very, very, very complex concepts. And sometimes the businesses are going to pretend that they sort of are doing that, but they don't know how to do it. So it becomes very tricky in general. Let's take an example of revenue recognition. Okay, a lot of businesses, if they have a seasoned CFO, and I know you had mentioned in your commentary that, supply chain people should care for the revenue recognition as well. And I'm not sure if I hear the revenue recognition term in the supply chain community. But, if you are going for, let's say, 3PL or logistics or those companies, then they might talk about it. So not many companies really understand, number one, how to recognize the revenue appropriately. If they are not getting audited, then they don't necessarily care. Sometimes I have seen scenarios where contract may be all over the place. They are sort of splitting, but they are not really following the guidelines overall from the revenue recognition. So in your opinion, let's say if these companies are not really following those things and they are not as streamlined from the process perspective in recognizing the revenue, what are the implications of that?
Well, so I think there are a couple of implications, and it's really on two sides. One, there's a compliance side.
Yep.
So if you're going out to try and loan money, or if you're a public company, you're in big trouble if you're not doing it right. But again, depending on where you're on the evolution of your business, it eventually catches up on you. I think the more harmful one is whereby you are managing the business properly and effectively today, and then you decide, I'm going to set up a new business over here that was selling a product on a subscription basis. So rather than customers ordering when it wants, we're going to use technology to communicate directly with our products out in the field, or allow the customer to connect with us. And we're going to supply, replenish, service based on this recurring revenue model. It's good for us because we can get predictable revenues. It's good for our customers because they know exactly what it's going to cost to maintain this. So there are lots of these business models that come in. For goodness sake, the sneakers that I bought, I got an email from them recently, or I saw in the browser, they're selling a subscription service, so that that they'll for runners or whatever. So they've got their demographic isn't good if they're looking at me for runners. Where on a subscription service, they'll provide new sneakers running shoes every 6 months or 4 months. So there are lots of businesses coming out with these new models, which are great. They're going to drive revenue. Yeah. They're going to drive market share and innovation. But then if you can't do this bit behind it, just recognizing the revenue or billing properly, or or managing the whole billing process, you end up building Frankenstein solutions. Yeah. Because if you're not thinking about it up front, it catches up with you behind it. And then you have to move very, very quickly, and you end up with even a worse solution. So you need to plan and think about these things, that as you're rolling out new business and as you're rolling out new products and new business models, you need to properly understand the entire internal supply chain of the impact through the organization. Because as margins get tighter and competition increases, the companies that can automate all of those processes are going to be the most effective. And getting back to, I'm an old lean manufacturing guy. I love lean manufacturing, the whole focus on value and getting rid of valueless tasks. That's absolutely every head, every hour that you spend trying to do RevRec or manage the billing process or the renewal process, that is all dead cost. That's not adding value. It's not adding a new customer. It's not adding a new product. It's not adding $1 to the bank. It's actually costing you. So it's vital, I think, in a business that they need to worry about these sort of inverted commas boring things. Now, the CFO won't think it's boring, but I'm sure the buyers and the planners and the engineers will think it's boring. But it's vital in order that we can put our costs and other things in the right things that are going to drive the most revenue for us.
Yeah, could not agree more. Amazing insights there. And, one of the things that I don't think businesses really understand that, what subscription revenue stream is great, because you are going to get predictable revenue for the planners as well as for buyers. It's great because you probably have the predictable inventory as well that you need to buy. Okay, but they don't necessarily understand, how much mindset change as well as change in the processes are going to be required. In fact, you probably need to change a lot in your operations as well as in your system landscape to be able to get this working. And the reason for that is because think of a contract. Let's say if you are selling an equipment for $100,000, okay? You cut the contract, you paid commission to your salespeople, you sort of fulfilled it, but now all of a sudden you are doing the subscription magic, which is great, right? Because then you can sell easily. Maybe I'm doing $1,000 per month deal, okay? But think of the moving pieces that are going to be there with this, okay? Because each month you need to cut the invoice, okay? And you need to plan for the revenue as well. So from the finance perspective, it's great, but from the operations, fulfillment, supply chain, as well as, from the accounting perspective, it's probably a nightmare. So I don't know if you are going to have any other commentary there to build on this, how you have seen businesses implementing it in changing the business model in the form of subscription.
Yeah, no. the thing about this whole model is it goes beyond the sort of boring part I talked about, the whole RevRec side.
Yeah.
This whole model as well is just continuous customer satisfaction. Because with subscription, you're going to know if customers are not satisfied straight away, and they might switch it off. So you're constantly engaged with customers, so it's great. But it can also be damaging as well if you have a customer service issue. So you need to really be on the ball. But one of the things, and it's not actually just limited to this. I think this is to do with integrations and with actually business in general, planning, every aspect of business. What happens when something doesn't go smoothly? What happens if a customer fails to pay for a month? What happens if you fail to deliver something? What happens if a customer increases halfway through their contract what they want to cover, or they want to reduce it? So it's how you, a lot of the time when setting up processes and implementing things, people always think about the best case. All working, how's it going to work smoothly and brilliantly? But life doesn't work that way. And things fail, they change. And again, one of the real important, how you manage what can be constant change. Certainly, if this is a new business model you're rolling out and you're not an expert in it, you're going to see a lot of change. So again, any systems and processes, you need to be thinking about how you're going to manage failure and how you're going to manage constant change, not just in your business, but in how the customer wants to interact with you as well, particularly if this is a new business model you don't have a lot of experience with.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think great comments there. I completely agree with what you have mentioned. So the other topic that you had mentioned related to the business model transformation, which is probably going to be near and dear to supply chain and procurement people's heart, because obviously they are dealing a lot more in the retail, commerce, distribution-centric spaces, right? And I don't know how many ERP vendors out there are going to be comfortable talking about e-commerce, which is a topic in itself, right? And NetSuite obviously does very, very well in general in the commerce space. And when you talk about the experience transformation, when you go from, let's say if you were traditional brick and mortar retail shop, okay, you are shipping pallets. Much easier, right? I mean, the only thing you need to plan is pallets, get it to the store. And after that, you don't have to worry about anything. Everything is done in probably POS. Maybe you need to do a little bit of planning, but not as complicated. But now let's talk about these different channels. And we have no idea how many channels are going to be there in the next 2 years, because that is sort of the ever expanding concept overall from the concept perspective. The more channels you are going to have, the more revenue you are going to get. But that is also an operational nightmare. Okay, managing that is very, very, very difficult. So overall, Paul, when you look at DTC, omnichannel experience, transforming business model from traditional brick and mortar retail to slightly more DTC e-commerce centric. So what would be your thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, so I think I have a couple of things. Obviously, the more channels you can do business via, the more customers you can engage, and you can engage with customers in the way that they want to be engaged with. I mean, I think the key thing, and we see this in our own consumer life in dealing with companies, is people need to have a consistent experience. They can't get one answer when they go on the website, another answer when they call up, or another answer from you if they go through your Amazon channel or different price. That's going to annoy people. It probably won't annoy me because I'm not a great person at looking at price. I should be, but it annoy my wife because she's absolutely all over that. So it needs that common experience. And the problem sometimes is, again, people have Frankenstein systems where they're all completely different because they needed to get into it quickly. They got into it quickly, they build the channel, but the customer experience starts to drop because they don't have accurate inventory information, they don't have accurate shipping information, or all these other types of things. So it's making sure you have that consistent channel. So if I call up, then I'm giving to a customer support person, then I'm getting exactly the same experience and information if I did it myself using a chatbot or whatever else. So I think that's a key thing with commerce. And I think there are other extremes with it as well. So there's one thing to have your own commerce channel, but it's another thing to use marketplaces or other things. And I'm sure everyone said this, but data or information is power. And the number of companies out there that have opened up a great channel, which provides a lot of business using an Amazon marketplace or using another marketplace might be great. But basically, you're giving that what might be your secret sauce on your products, your pricing, your marketing, your sales process. You're giving all of that to a third party. And all you're left with is the product. And if you're a distributor, that's even worse, because that's your expertise. So you have to be very careful of the channels that open up. That might give you a short-term amount of revenue, but are actually giving away your secret sauce. And we've all seen companies that have morphed and decided, you know something, my expertise is in design and marketing and selling. It's not in manufacturing and distribution, and they outsource all of that. But again, you open up some of these channels for short-term revenue streams that can have a longer-term impact. And we've seen that across multiple different industries. So I think that needs to be key. The other area is some of your existing functionality might not be able to support this type of business model. And it might be things that you don't think about. So one of the recent modules, and I'll give you, because NetSuite fell into this with some of its customers, and we've got lots of customers out there that were wholesalers or you know, and you've seen lots of retailers have turned their stores into mini distribution centers where you have consumers coming and buying stuff and staff picking stuff off the shelf to supply commerce orders. So if you look at our inventory system, our stock take and our perpetual inventory or cycle count, we're all about you freeze the items, you count them, and as soon as you finish counting them, then you can start transacting them. Now, if you're a wholesaler, if you're using a retail store, you can't do that. You need to be doing counting while the inventory is in action. You can't freeze it because you can't say to somebody, you know, you can't buy that from me. You have to wait until this count's done and then I'll allow you to check out. You're going to lose those customers. So we had to re-engineer our inventory system in order to support real-time counting. So there's big things like some of the things that I've said, but there's a lot of little things as well that get in the way of that customer experience and that customer set that you need to be mindful of when opening up these new channels.
And that is just a great comment, to be honest. Overall, re-engineering your inventory processes, because obviously they drive a lot. And I love your comment related to, for the retail store, you cannot really close it down because, that's going to be your real-time inventory that you are transacting with. But overall, let's say if I'm transforming my business and I am trying to figure out, and by the way, MEC, your comment related to putting everything out there from the distributor perspective, for secret sauce, and sometimes that could be a tricky conversation as well. So I don't know what you recommend to distributors, whether they should be selling on Amazon, they should not be selling on Amazon. I think you need a little bit of thinking there. Go ahead, Paul, if you have any comments. Yeah.
No, I think it's just something you need to be mindful of, and everyone needs to be mindful of when we do it. So again, don't rush into things. Yep. Look at it, analyze it, and make sure everyone's in agreement. And I think that's the key thing. So it's not the wrong thing to do. It's a great channel for many businesses, and it's a vibrant channel. But I think certainly if you're a distributor, you need to think about that one. Yep. That one carefully. But it's just another of those things that needs to be thought about with change management.
Yeah, could not agree more. So now on this comment related to change management, and one of the challenge always is going to be to build the consensus. And I don't know how many people are really successful with that, to be honest, okay? You can never get everybody to agree on one thing. So in your experience, when you are dealing with your clients, what are some of the things that these companies are doing to build the consensus and making sure everybody is going to agree? Or do you see the customers, you know what, I'm going to do this today. Okay, take it or leave it. It's up to you how I don't know how that's going to go. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I'll answer this in a couple of ways. So again, for our customers, one of the things that we did quite some time ago is on top of NetSuite, we built a whole number of additions for different industries and different size of customers, different size of companies that are based on leading practices. So when we go in, the very first time that sales engages with the customer, that they engage via a set of leading practices, not here's all the features and functions, but this is how a business of your size and your type would operate. And then from that, they find out where there might be differences, and they can see whether those differences are no longer needed, or they need to be put into the overall leading practice. And then they demonstrate the software so that people understand how it's going to be used. And in fact, when the deal gets signed and it goes across to the consulting team, they know exactly how the customer is going to be implemented right at that time. And the customer does. So that helps some of the change discussion in customers, because rather than asking, what would you like to do? They're seeing a whole set of leading practices that are based on implementing thousands and thousands of similar customers. So that helps substantially. So that's one of our approaches when we engage with companies, and it's been very successful for us. And I think more and more companies want to do it. But for us, it permeates every part of our organization: sales, services, development, in building those solutions. We call it suite success. I think there's a couple of other things with change management. You talked about consensus.
Yeah.
My experience with consensus is, without consensus going through a process, because you always need consensus at the end, but if you just say, how should we do this as a problem? Consensus will only ever bring you back to where you currently are. Because that's why you're doing what you're currently doing, because that's what everyone thinks you should do. So if you want to do something different, so you have to be very careful with consensus. But and I do this internally within NetSuite as well, is try to make decisions or show options where they're data centric. So there's data and evidence to say this is how we should be doing, this is why we should be doing something. And it doesn't make the decision, but it gives a discussion point that there's firm data about. Now, people might disagree with it, and it needs to be fine-tuned, but it stops actually talking about or concentrating on areas that aren't important and going off down rabbit holes. Oh, we should go and do this. If the data says, none of our customers do that, or no one's interested in it. So I think that's also an important part of making sure that the right decisions are made, that they're data centric in what they do. I think the other thing I would say is culture, and you probably heard this before. When culture eats technology and best practice or process for breakfast, how people operate. And I learned this very early on in my career at an implementation where we're working with the accounts payable team to streamline the account process. So the customer's spending consulting dollars for us to go in and help on that. And the CEO of the company came in and he said, "What are you doing? Not aggressive, but what's?" And we explained what we're doing. He said, "No, that's not how we work. We pay invoices when suppliers shout the loudest. That's our process. There's no need to automate it. There's no need to streamline it. That's how we pay. That's the trigger point." And again, I think we need to think about that with change. There are some changes that if we could go and execute, we know are going to make a massive difference. But if we can't do it and the business survive at the same time with how people work, then there's no use doing that. And people get disheartened quickly when you set the bar too high and you can't get there. So I think with change as well, you have to understand what is going to be acceptable within the organization so that you can survive to then accommodate that change. And that's a bit unwielding, but it needs to be properly thought about. If these things were easy, we'd already be doing it. They're not easy, they're tough. So you have to look at it, appropriately.
Yeah, they are definitely not easy. And I love your story, to be honest. Okay. And we get a lot of these stories as well. And, it's a similar story as you. In this particular case, this particular customer, they used to cut invoices before they send the sales order. Can you believe this? Okay. And they were like, okay, I've been doing this for the last 60 years. Okay. 60 years in business. We have our software. We have a brand for that. Okay. We designed it. That's how we do it. None of the mainstream ERP are going to do it. And I was like, guys, you gotta be serious, okay? Nobody is doing in the market. You need to change your processes because, if you are going to customize this, it doesn't make any sense. But they won't listen to it. So sometimes it could be a very funny and tricky conversation, to be honest, in these situations. So Paul, now let's talk about some more stories, okay? So I know obviously NetSuite is great. There's no question about that, right? So talk
You're
about.
right. I'm glad you said that. That's exactly right.
You guys have done what, 34,000 installations now? Yep. You need to be great to get there, okay? So obviously you are great. There's no question about that. But what I really like to talk about is the number one, the success stories as well as the failure stories. And if somebody is going to say that they have never failed with an ERP, I'm not sure how to take them seriously, to be honest, because there could be so many different factors that could drive an ERP failure, right? So maybe share a couple of success stories and a couple of failure stories, and maybe the reasoning behind why either the implementations were successful or were failure.
Sure. So let's talk about failures first. And I think some of the failures, and people see it in ERP all the time. They see it in not just NetSuite, they see it with SAP, Oracle. All companies out there have failures. And sometimes, well, a lot of the time, certainly the ones you see in the news, it's because there are millions and millions of dollars lost. Yep. And some of that is because, again, they're trying to do a lot more than they were culturally able to get done. And it's not as though the product was bad. I mean, you read lots of stories about SAP implementations that have been horror stories, but SAP is one of the most successful ERP products in the world that lots of companies are using it. So again, it's sometimes people bite off more than they can chew, and it's difficult. And as I said, culture eats technology for breakfast with some of these things. So the other, I think the other area, and we're quite focused on this, and it's can be difficult for NetSuite because we could support every type of business, and we have our financials in probably every type of business there is around the world. But it's making sure that the product is fit for purpose when we put it into an organization. And ironically, one of the things that we do, even though we have financials, ERP, supply chain, WMS, commerce, HCM, payroll, planning and budget, we've got everything that any type of company would need as our own product embedded. But when you go into a company, it might be, well, we're using Shopify or we're using Magento. And we put a huge investment into that. It's like, okay, well, to get the benefit of this digital transformation, you just put in financials and inventory into NetSuite, and we'll just plug into these other products. And then over time, you can roll them in. So people don't discard huge parts of their technology which is driving the business today. And sometimes, again, people try and bite off more than they can chew. One of the bigger failures I remember within NetSuite, and obviously I won't say who any or give any list who these companies are, and actually they're still customers of ours. But there was one company that was transitioning from another system onto NetSuite because the system wasn't fit for purpose and they needed to go onto NetSuite. But NetSuite is very customizable. The Suite Cloud platform is like the Force.com platform. You can do anything, build anything on it. So they went and rebuilt their current AR and AP processes the way it works today on top of NetSuite, based on a completely different product. And so the whole process slowed down because they had all this code running on top of the core code. They didn't look at the normal processes, and they spent thousands and thousands of dollars doing this to have a product end of it wasn't fit for purpose. And so what they ended up going back and doing is just ripped all that out and implemented the leading practices. So that unfortunately, when someone selects a product that's not fit for purpose and how a business needs to operate, so I would say with NetSuite, if you took NetSuite into a tier one automotive supplier, supplying into Ford or GM or whatever parts, that's not our bread and butter. And could we do it? Yes, but there's going to be a lot of hiccups along the way. So really making sure that you have you have those processes well aligned. And our successes are I mean, it's a difficult question to answer because we have thousands of successes. You just need to look at NetSuite over the years with our customer sat. But certainly those companies that want to sort of revolutionize their commerce channels, their pricing, their business models, those type of things. We have a customer today. I won't mention the name because this is a public thing, but they're an example of companies that drive success. They're a company that's a software company. They create software. They're a company that creates hardware and manages hardware. There's a company, the same company does food manufacture and distribution. So all the complexities of that compliance and other things. And it's great to see companies like that using NetSuite, where there's really no other product out there that does all of those things simultaneously, and it sells to consumers as well. All of that is just a great representation of NetSuite success. I think there's some of the others which we're most proud of are companies that started from almost zero and are now multi-billion-dollar organizations. And that's a very enjoyable road to go along as someone who works for a software vendor, to see that success moving forward. It's tremendous. And I mean, I'm sure other companies have something similar, but again, working with NetSuite, we've got hundreds and hundreds of customers that have moved from 5 million in revenue to billions in revenue, and that's very enjoyable to see.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Paul, for those stories and insights. So we can probably do one more question before we do your closing advice. We have roughly, 3 minutes right now. So any trends that you want to talk about that people should be excited about? So either trends or NetSuite features, whatever you want to cover more from the future perspective in like a minute or two. Paul.
Yeah, sure. So one of our big focuses over the last couple of years has been around planning. And anyone in ERP, certainly manufacturers, distributors, or retailers, planning is key. Material planning, product planning, demand forecasting, all of those things. So we've really been leveraging that all the way up to business planning. So having business planning connect all the way down to MRP or whatever else. So you can constantly monitor the whole health of the business and make decisions on a regular basis, rather than doing company planning twice a year or whatever else. You can do it continuously. And certainly over the last few years, one of the things that everyone has had to do is to do continuous planning. So that's been great functionality that's been very exciting, and we're seeing a lot of traction with our customers. And I think for the next couple of years, we're going to see that evolve even further. Obviously, you can never talk about any type of business solution today without talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and how that is evolving enterprise solutions. And it does it across the board, ways that people don't even know. So there's intelligence. So if you look at NetSuite, there's intelligence in the cloud that people don't even see, where the product's been dynamically optimized by what's going on underneath the covers. It's stopping any type of fraud, or it's stopping any type of illegal penetration into the product. All of those things, it's using machine learning and AI to do all of that. When we actually went up to the latest autonomous database technology years ago, what happened is the team stripped out all the indexes that they had built up over years and years of learning, 20 years of learning to optimize how people were using the product. And it's amazing. Within a week, the autonomous database had rebuilt them all and more. So it knew exactly how to do that. So there's a whole ton of stuff that's happening under the covers that's allowing customers to concentrate on running their businesses rather than worrying about that. And then the intelligence that's helping drive better automation, better insight for our customers. So we have we have a predictive solution in the supply chain that predicts supply chain interruptions and then prescriptively tells you this is what you should do to solve that. So again, things like that are really changing what we're doing. And I think when we look at, there's a lot talked about with generative AI, these large learning models that are that are writing, essays for students and things like that, which are great and interesting, but they're going to be adding real value to business solutions as well. So one of the things I would say differentiates, again, NetSuite to others is how we think about people using our software. So we're far more thinking about activation. So picking up, using the software, because you're the expert, you know what function you want to run through. You should be able to pick up software that's designed for you to be able to use it, as opposed to implementation. Implementation all encompasses learning, understanding before you get that value. So we're all about activation. So I think when you look at longer term, how intelligence is going to be helping companies, it's going to be making software far more consumable, because it's going to be presenting in a way that the customer wants to see it, because it's going to understand before they know what they need in order to do it. And I think that's going to be quite revolutionary. But if you think about other products that are going to be revolutionized, like product configurators. Product configurators today are tough to write. It's the visual content, it's taking very technical information, getting into a way that's consumer oriented. You think how that's going to evolve over the next few years using intelligence. The other one is writing code. I don't like this form. I want to add a field that measures carbon content for this group of products. And imagine it then writing the code to add that field, but then also working out how to go and calculate the carbon content by connecting up to different sources and calculations. So all this type of incredible value we're going to be seeing coming into business applications that have been driven by learning. And we're right here. We're right at the beginning of that curve, and we're already seeing incredible technologies or incredible insights that we're delivering through our business intelligence or through our predicted insights or intelligent product recommendations. But all these other things that are going to be coming through, that Oracle is investing millions and millions in to bring business to make business use of intelligence technology. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, very exciting. And I'm pretty sure procurement community is going to be excited about that as well. So thank you so much, Paul, once again for your time, for being kind, and thanks to NetSuite as well for being generous with their time as well. On that note, thanks everyone for joining today. We are going to come back again. We do this every month, second Thursday. On that note, thank you so much, everyone, once again. Kathy, over to you. Do you have any?
Thank you very much. We'll probably rejoin. Our next show will probably be in September. We usually take some of the summer months off for the Voice of ERP, but thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for hosting, Sam, and thank you, Paul, for your insights. They were great takeaways indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.